4 years ago, I uploaded a video to this channel. This channel was already 9 years old at that point, and although I had spent the first few years actually trying to upload proper videos, mostly content like Pokémon footage and news, it had really become a dumping ground for my shitposts. The video itself was my first true foray into video essays, something I had really been enjoying and believed I could do well myself. The only problem was that I needed a topic, which came to me kind of out of nowhere as I launched myself back into the Deltarune YouTube community. Several hours of watching videos and VODs later, I had my idea, and thus diegetic control in Deltarune and why it's important was born. Welcome viewers, I am Vivat Veritas, and to say that my first Deltarune video changed the trajectory of my channel is an understatement. However, today I don't just want to wax lyrical about myself and instead take a look at the actual content of that first video. In the past 4 years, we've had 2 whole new chapters of content to look over, with a third on its way, in addition to a bunch of really cool community videos. I was uncertain whether or not I was going to make this video, but with Chapter 5's release date announced and very much impending, I thought it would be good to leave my other videos to post Chapter 5 and instead reflect on my very first theory video, and maybe take some guesses as to what could be in store for us in the next while. I don't think I'll make a habit out of this, but I thought it would be a fun opportunity to look backwards through time and my entrance into Deltarune theorizing, see how things have changed, what stayed the same, what the future could have in store. I also recorded my brainstorming and original unfiltered thoughts on this subject and have uploaded it as an unlisted video linked in the description, so if you want to see me ramble for a bit, check it out. Without further ado, I'm going to take you back to the past. Join me, won't you? Let's have a look at the video, shall we? Thankfully, a significant portion of the video is just stuff from Undertale, which has aged well because Undertale is still Undertale, thank goodness. There is a bit of theorizing, but I think things like Narakara are not any less disputed than they were when I made the video, so I don't really feel the need to address any of it. The really interesting stuff is the Deltarune focused stuff, the idea that the very concept of control, the control that the player has over Chris, is diegetic. In simpler terms, it is part of the game that we control the main character, which isn't true of most video games. I think this idea has aged pretty well through things like the prophecy, the interactions we have with Chris, and more information we have about the world of Deltarune itself. There's one thing that really solidifies diegetic control's place in the thematics and narrative, and that's the prophecy, so let's talk about it first. The prophecy is fate written in glass, and what is fate if not the universe's control? Someone should make some kind of fate theory. Anyway, the point of my first video was to talk about the role that the player has on the narrative of Deltarune insofar as affecting Chris and the world. Now though, we have an overarching web, as it were, something that in a way even controls us. This demonstrates a facet of the limitation of the control we can exert upon the world, something I talked about in my first video, so it's good to see that that's aged well. Regardless of how much we control Chris, the game is aware of this and limits us in turn. Considering our various choices apparently don't matter, especially if we do indeed buy into the prophecy, and why not, as we buy into the story of any other game, I think that ultimately any breaking of the prophecy will come more so from Susie and Chris rather than us. Of course, the symbolism of Susie destroying the only option is pretty clear-cut in terms of how we can and should feel about the prophecy and Susie's role in perpetuating it. A large emphasis of the original video was the fact that Susie is the one person we can't control, but Chris kind of can because they're friends and friendship is good. In fact, Chapter 1 of Deltarune shows us that friendship is what's required when someone won't just be friends with you in the king battle. Hypothetically, if the prophecy isn't able to be defeated through control, then maybe it's up to the friends we made to do it. In this way, the original video checks out. Susie is key to breaking the prophecy if we so wish, but how that interacts with the ending of Deltarune is complex and not really the point of this video. However, if we stop controlling Chris, then Deltarune probably ends, spare any vessel shenanigans, and if anyone is going to do that, then it's Susie. I'll keep talking about the prophecy throughout the video, but we've got the important stuff down. Now, with more information about the Grand Fountain, but honestly mostly just me thinking about it more, I do want to mention a little bit about the castle town and how interesting it is it's named after the player. In the original video, I just used it as proof that the player is diegetic, but not much else. I think it's really intentional that this place, the place where everyone can be safe and all of the friends can coexist, the place born of pure darkness and perhaps the source of all darkness, is named after us. Not Rousey, not Chris, but us. None of the characters know who this person is, the person who is us, so it's truly odd that somehow this name has entered into the game. If we're connected to the castle town and it is in turn connected to the Grand Fountain, then we, as a player, will play a large role regarding the fountain. There's a lot of theorizing over sealing the Grand Fountain being the ending of the game, and I think that this is a very vague point in the favor of player is the angel and maybe the heaven, etc. and so forth, but let's finish with this point first. The point is, it's still super weird how the castle town is named after us, and places the player as the holder of the town, and thus the Grand Fountain, more than any actual character in a symbolic, almost deific way. In terms of the player, we have a lot more interactions with the voice from the introduction, both in the night fight and at the end of Chapter 4. These don't tell us a whole lot, but we do still know that the voice does want to make a new future, and thus isn't particularly interested, but is very knowledgeable of the prophecy. They also have some kind of ownership of Deltarune, though it's unclear whether or not they're talking about Deltarune the world or Deltarune the game. Since we are supposedly in league with them to some degree, it makes sense that the player has something to do with breaking the fate of the prophecy. There are 3 points of information that I think connect in an important way, showing us a path forward. 1. Diegetic control is being used by the game to show that control, regardless of intent, is bad, and that freedom is good, or at least worth desiring. This was set up in my first video and still seems to be true. 2. A controlling prophecy exists that is from the angel, and the angel will be banished alongside its heaven after meeting its desire. 3. People want to break the prophecy, such as the voice and Susie, the latter of which is the main person who could break Chris free of us. I think this comes together to show us that the angel is the epitome of control, and it seems that the game ends with us being disconnected from Chris, and honestly, that convinces me more towards player angel more than anything else. A change in my perception, rather than any actual evidence from new chapters, is my understanding of the aforementioned difference between the world and game of Deltarune, explained best in the device theory by Mollystars. The fact that our connection to this voice is diegetic emphasized the diegetic connection between us and Chris, and in a way, we are in turn controlled by the device. After all, we are constrained by the device and instructed to do certain things, although vague in instruction, and instead told through what we are and are not able to do. Likewise, although we rarely give Chris true instruction, we still limit what they can and can't do via the situations we put them in. I suppose that this is to say that if it wanted to, the voice could genuinely make it so that we could not play Deltarune, or we could be forced to only choose hurtful actions. In turn, the voice's desires and intentions are limited by our capabilities. Compared to Chapter 2, there aren't too many moments in the recent chapters where there's a significant emphasis on you or Chris, at least not that I've noticed, though of course Chapter 3 is very much about Chris and how we are not them, like getting the quizzes wrong based on our assumptions. This is a really good small detail, I love it. There's also a big emphasis on Chris in the night fight, understandably. Also, whatever the hell this is in the sword route. The main one I noticed is Chapter 4's Egg Room, where the whole art therapy sequence is very much targeted at Chris themselves, not us, but the language of Chris and you is inconsistent. Considering how deeply personal this sequence is, I would have really expected there to be much more of a linguistic emphasis on Chris rather than us. I do think that there's something here though. When relating to the action of drawing, it's just Chris, but is you all the other time. To me, this implies that the act of drawing is freeing in some way to Chris, as the therapy would imply. This makes sense, of course, and I like the idea that when Chris is acting by themselves, they are kind of chaotic, free from our control and perception, deliberately showing a lack or willingness of control on their behalf. There's also definitely no other times where something like this happens. Speaking of which, we get to see Chris a lot without us there in Chapter 4, and it tells us a lot about the relationship they have with us and how they view our control. Sure, they don't want us to interfere or know about talking to whoever is on the phone, but they also just play the piano and make chocolate milk. This all comes back to Chris trying to assert themselves in the world, reminding us, themselves, and the world of Deltarune that they are their own person without the soul. It kind of seems like Chris does absolutely not want anyone else to know about the soul, whether it's Noelle, Susie, or Toriel, going as far to even allow certain things to happen under their watch, which is really odd considering people know about souls. Ultimately, Chris sees the soul as a tool. They clearly need a soul to enter the Dark Worlds and or steal the fountains, or otherwise is somehow important to their intentions. This is a good way of doing it, because of course, the soul could be anyone with any intentions. Sure, I like to think that I want the best for Chris, but like I said in the first video, unwanted control is still unwanted even if the person controlling you is doing good things. I think however they acquired this soul has something to do with Carol and their group task. It clearly isn't theirs since it was present in the liminal and yet real world space of the introduction. This of course raises the question as to where the hell is Chris's actual soul, but I think it could be possible that the soul we see in the introduction is now in the vessel and somewhere else, and we instead were forced to control Chris's soul instead. I don't know. Whatever. It doesn't really matter. What does matter is that Chris doesn't know anything about us. All they know, for sure at least, is that there is some kind of force in the soul that is making them take actions. They have no idea about our world, and it's unlikely that they know anything about save files or the voice that we interact with. It makes sense then that in the normal route they put us in a box and to the side when we need to not be around. They hit us away whenever we try to approach because, again, they don't want us interfering. There isn't even inherently that much disrespect. This whole sequence emphasizes my main point from the original video, that being controlled is inherently bad regardless of intention. Chris understands that we do have to work together, and just as we can manipulate them, they can also enforce control over us, and we are inherently limited by their own ability, like us and the device. I think that this is a big element as to why it never really feels particularly bad to be doing what we do. I don't think Toby Fox's intention is for us to feel bad about playing the game. It's an interesting philosophical question, but as long as we behave ourselves, then at worst, Chris will just see us as a potential tool to use when necessary. To be fair, even if they knew we were a whole-ass person, they probably wouldn't do much different, but in a world of magic and monsters, we could be, for all Chris knows, an evil demon. And sometimes we are. I talked about the Snowgrave route, now much more commonly called the Weird route, in my first video, and boy howdy do I feel like it's incredibly pertinent to diegetic control more than ever. There's so much to go over, so I'll only talk about the relevant stuff. Obviously, part of it is about overriding everyone's wishes to have a sense of control as the player, and I've generally focused on Noelle on that for good reason. However, more than anyone else, we override Chris. We completely rob them of any characterization, and unlike general Deltarune stuff, we are actively doing bad and hurtful things to the people around Chris. This is why only in the Weird route does Chris beat the shit out of us. This is when Chris hates us, truly hates us, but still has to work with us. This is when it feels bad, because we are so thoroughly overriding their own desire and autonomy for seemingly no purpose other than destroying everyone around them for some kind of sick amusement. Hell, Chapter 4 emphasizes the fact that it is the player doing this, not Chris. No hiding behind Kara this time, even Noelle knows that this isn't Chris. I'm so fascinated to see where this goes, because I do believe that if the player is going to manifest anywhere, and if there is going to be conflict between us and Chris, it will be here, where we throw everything away for the sake of control. To end, there's a foggy vision in my head of how much nostalgia and connection and control are tied together, especially by Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is the one with no freedom boss or leitmotif anywhere. It's the chapter that is the most about Chris's nostalgia, which Tenna manipulates. Tenna and Chris have some kind of deal, whatever the hell is going on in the Sword route. It's the Dark World where Chris forces Susie into it. Outside of Chapter 3, our connection to Deltarune is inherently steeped in nostalgia thanks to the association with Undertale. Chris's connection might also be steeped in nostalgia if their mission is to somehow save Des. The Weird route is inherently tied to the goodwill and nostalgic relationship that Chris and Noelle have, and taking advantage of that, Gerson talks about how freedom comes from trying new things and writing with your white pen of hope, a direct opposition to nostalgia. There's this idea that seems to be happening that nostalgia controls you using your connection to the past. To tie this in with diegetic control, only by breaking free of this control can you create something new, can you try to do a new thing. Breaking fate can only occur when you're looking forward, and for anyone to ever break free of control, you can't be lost in the past. So, I guess that's the end of the video, huh? I don't really have much profound to say at the end of here, mostly because I don't expect many people to watch it, but still, I'm glad I was able to actually piece something together here. It was a lot of fun looking back on my old video and seeing what has changed and what hasn't. Maybe when Deltarune is done, I'll do something like this again. If you've made it this far, you may have also seen something at the end of my previous video. I'll tell you this, rain is the key to solving it. Thank you so much to my patrons Zalgo, Michael Bates, Tybee Fitzhugh, Mio, and Nigel Robinson. some of whom have been with me ever since I opened up my Patreon. I've recently lowered the prices, so maybe give it a look if you haven't. If you've got anything else you'd like me to reevaluate, an idea for a future video, or something to say about this video, please leave me a comment. They're like half the reason why I make these videos. Until next time, I've been Viva Veritas, and I'll see you again soon.